So, hello and a very warm welcome. Thanks for joining our latest Momentum 101. I'll be introducing two of our broker partners from our network who have started their own insurance brokerages with Momentum. Before we do, a little more about this discussion. If you're watching this live and not on demand, you can chat confidentially just simply by just changing your name, by following the prompts on the screen now, and just click your initials next to the chat box and change your location. For instance, just Leicestershire as your name. That way we can ensure your confidentiality and you can ask whatever you need to ask. Now, certainly for some stats, I think it's a really, really good way of starting this chat. But look, we've got over 100 appointed representatives in the Momentum network, spread right across the UK. They all operate independently, using their own name, their own branding, their own working practices, and ultimately have their own clients. What this isn't our first rodeo. Momentum have been market-leading network since 2010 and have plenty of discussions like this. Looking back at these sessions which we've hosted, these 101s, for every 30 people who watch or listen to this webinar, 20 turn up. We have a few dropouts, as you would always imagine. 8 will have a conversation and 3 will actually start a brokerage over the next 12 months. So some quite powerful stats there. Now, we're talking today about the power of partnerships and why independence doesn't mean you're going alone. The Momentum model is about empowering people just like you, and two of our broker partners who are going to join us shortly have put their skills and years of experience to good use by starting their own brokerages. Some have started on their own, some have gone and started with friends and colleagues. Whatever route you decide to take, there's a fair amount to consider, and hopefully today, by listening to this webinar or watching this webinar, you'll get a lot of answers to the things which may be swimming through your mind. So that's enough from me. Let's start introducing our panel. First of all, we've got Nigel Bartlett from Bartlett Risk Solutions. Thanks for joining us, Nigel.
All right.
And Tom Butler from Hardings and Shaw, fresh off the boat. Tom.
Morning.
A very warm welcome. I stress once again, this is not a sales pitch from Momentum. We've teed our guests up to ensure that they don't make this a sales pitch. What we want this to be is a warts and all and helping you really, really understand what it takes to set your own business up if it's the right thing for you. So by all means, if you hear or see anything that is a bit salesy, call it out. So Nigel, let's start with you. Give us a very brief background to who you are, what and what your business is all about.
Yeah, so I run a commercial brokerage in Staffordshire, and it will be 8 years old. Yeah, 8 years old at the end of August this year. My background was predominantly in the sort of large global brokers, mostly in sales positions, and a couple of head of office positions as well. But interestingly, never really directly client management. But yeah, 8 years ago, I decided that was it, enough for me. Go and start my own business, and here I am.
Yes, it's quite a scary period of time, isn't it? I remember our first conversation, Nigel, when myself, you and Howard got together, and so it doesn't seem like 8 years ago. Does it feel the same for you, Nigel?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, it's flown by. It really has. Yeah. I can't actually believe it when I look at the calendar and think 2018 when it started. Yeah, amazing.
Our life has changed. So I'm over to you. You know, what's a brief introduction to you and your background and what your business is all about?
Yeah, thanks, Alistair. I started broking back in 1992 and stayed with the same company throughout that. That was Schofield Insurance. And we sold that 5 years ago now. So we're a new startup now from 1st of Feb. My co-founder Martin Billington and myself just saw that it just gave us an opportunity to do what we wanted to do, which was get back to client facing and looking after clients. And from day one, yeah, and that's really it. Back to the independence rather than a large international group, mainly commercial. So.
That's really handy, Tom. I mean, we're talking about partnerships today, and you know, you've just started the process. You've gone and you've made the plunge. You've started your business and the rest of it. And And you had options, didn't you? You know, you've run and been a director and a shareholder of a directly authorised brokerage. It went through that sale process, and here you are starting up a new brokerage in your own name with your colleague Martin. Now you had choices, didn't you? You could have been directly authorised. You could have done things in very different ways. How important was it for you to start a business with a partner such as Momentum?
Well, quite well. It gave us the ability to focus on clients from day one. That was our key driver. It was from day one being able to get up and running and start trading. And by partnering with Momentum, whether it was Momentum or any other AR type business, it gives us that ability because we've got the background support from compliance, accounts, training, broking teams, and so on, and accounts and FCA approval. Whereas if we went directly authorized from day one, it would be a longer process to be directly authorized. We'd have to arrange agencies in our own names, our own right, with the insurers. So Momentum, I don't know, I can't remember, else you might correct me, but 250, 300 different agencies from day one.
Yeah.
It basically means we've got a turnkey brokerage from the day we start to be able to trade with absolutely everyone that we're used to trading with. So it's that ability just to get on and do what we want to do best from the beginning, without having to deal with all the rest of the problems in the background. Yeah.
I mean, Nigel, you've got an interesting way about yourself in regards to how you run your business. You know, I think you're a strong advocate for doing what you're good at and leaving everything else for the people who are good at that. Is that a fair assumption in regards to your ethos and the way you treat a partnership?
Definitely. I don't see, it makes no sense to try and do things that you're no good at if you don't have to do them. And for me, obviously, you've only got so much time and resource, and it's got to go where it's going to have its most the most effect. So if you're referring to systems, then yeah, you know, I don't put my hand up and go, I'm great with systems, actors particularly. It just adding hours to my day, and that so we will obviously find a work around that. But yeah, for me, when I set up, I thought, right, what do I think I'm good at? That's client relationship work.
Yeah.
What I'm not good at, right? So what can be done about the stuff that I'm not good at? And the Momentum had a solution to all of that. So, you know, for me, it's just, yeah, perfect fit really at the time.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for that, Nigel. Thanks, Tom. We keep talking about this power of partnerships, and we want to continue that theme right throughout today. So we'll keep coming back to it. But both of you run independent brokerages. We talk about Momentum being a partnership with you, being in a partnership with you. But how important is it for you to run your own business and have your own clients? And I can see you chomping at the bit to answer that one, Nigel. So I'm going to give it to you first of all.
Well, that's a scratch my head. Well, yeah, it was for me. It was everything because I used to think, oh, you know, maybe this particular role isn't right for me, or this environment isn't right for me. I don't like this. I don't like that. And then at the end of the day, I had to face up to, you know, maybe I was the square peg, and the, you know, the industry that I was choosing to work in was a round hole, or at least the firms that I was working for. And it was nothing to do with the environment, you know, because they're great companies and loads of people have fantastic careers there. But I think it was just I didn't feel like I wanted to fit into that corporate landscape. There's far too much focus on internal stuff, meetings, and you know, heavy on admin as well.
Yeah.
And it was taking me further and further away from where I actually wanted to be. And I wanted to manage my own time. I mean, I know the world's changed a little bit since COVID with home working and all the rest of it, but prior to that, it wasn't. And, you know, I need you in London. What for? Well, I've got an hour's meeting, and it was like an all-day thing. In the end, it just made no sense to me. So for me to be able to wrestle that time back was a real factor in me deciding to go on my own.
Yeah, no, I really, really appreciate that. And so shifting that question to you, Tom, it's your own business. You are independent and it is your own clients. How important was that to you to take control?
Yeah, hugely. And I'll second what Nigel just said. Really, it's going back to when I first started in insurance. There were two or three of us, well, three of us in the business, and it grew to 35, and then obviously more latterly larger numbers, but less control. And again, admin and meetings and virtual meetings and meetings in person and everything else tend to get in the way. I accept it. We a lot of what I had most recently has been hugely beneficial to me. But actually, I want to get back to where it was. Not back in the 90s. I don't want to go backwards. I want to go forwards. But it's about building those relationships back up and being available to clients and knowing everything about my client, which is what I always knew. And they know who the handling teams are, and they have access to me. When I speak to clients, I know each client and I know what risks they've got, and I know addresses and postcodes and vehicles and everything else about it. And we've got clients of all sizes, and we will hopefully generate more clients, in this relationship moving forwards. We're just by, with having a pipeline in place to look for new clients to put on the books and build those relationships again, as I have done historically.
Do you sorry to cut across you there, Tom?
No, Tom.
I mean, as a directly authorised broker, as you were, do you think achieving what you now want to achieve is possible with the structure that you had previously before the business was acquired?
If we were to start again, is that what you're saying? As directly authorised,
if you're a directly authorised broker,
partnering with Momentum or similar?
Yeah.
Not as easily as this process as I found this process to be. I think I considered lots of different options and looked at different.
Sure.
We were part of back in 1994, part of Broker Network, or founder members of Broker Network, which although not an AR platform, it was for directly authorized businesses. But we had the backing for compliance and accounts if we wanted, and training and CPD and everything else, as well as insurer relationships and agencies. Yeah. So it was sort of maybe the next step up from where we are now. But to start a new business from scratch and go directly authorized, you would probably have to go as a small business, have to go into a similar sort of network environment. Otherwise, like I said before, you've got to build your agency base, and you've got to get the FCA compliance acceptance to be directly authorized. You've got banking to consider. You've got compliance. You've got CPD to consider. Training and everything else. Whereas with the likes of yourselves and Momentum, the processes and structures already in place. It's turnkey. Mm-hmm. We turn it on whatever date we start, and off we go. We've got access to everything from day one. You mentioned cost, or we mentioned cost earlier. It's not, it isn't a huge cost. There is a cost involved in it with a PAS system like Actress. But it's a sensible cost. Whereas if I was doing that alone, it wouldn't be as sensible per user. It would cost more. FCA compliance, everything else. Everything would be more of a cost involved, and I'm sure a lot more headaches.
Yeah, I'm sure it would be. And do you having to rely on Momentum for so many things, or being an appointed representative? And we'll stick with you on this one, Tom. Does that stop you from being independent? Does that restrict you in any way, or create challenges or restrictions, if that's the right choice of words?
Well, I think, to be honest, I don't see it as a reliance. I don't believe that's the case. It's a partnership, it's a relationship, it's a family, and that's what I liked about Momentum and the independence of the business and the group. you've got to, yeah, it's not a reliance. It enables me. It enables me to do what I need to do, which is to generate new income from new clients and build relationships and be able to give that advice as me. It gives my clients access to me and Martin, both of us. And the beauty is, in the background, quite subtly, we have the support of a broking team that is dedicated to us, which is brilliant. The accounts team, it's too early for us to say, but again, I have no doubt with the PAS system that Actress is, and the team in the background is great. Compliance, marketing, and everything else that goes with the relationship and that we have with Momentum, or partnering with Momentum. It allows us to just get on and do what we want to do, which is ultimately be an insurance broker.
Excellent. So you, Nigel, sorry, getting comfortable here, but Nigel, over to you. What is your thoughts on the infrastructure around you? It restricts you? Is it something you have to rely on, or is I think Tom put it quite nicely, is it an enabler?
For me, it's an enabler, because going back to what we said earlier, they do a lot of things that I'm just not very good at. I've got no interest in, but I have to be interested in it because it's part of running the business. So for me, it hums along lovely in the background. I've, over the years, had some Momentum people take a more front-facing role. So I've had come see clients with me, which has been a big help. We had a tricky claim recently through one of the clients that we inherited through the acquisition, and Hazel and Matt joined me on the call with the client, and it's been resolved peacefully, and it's gone well. So all those things, I think, they're intangible, but it's like Tom said, it's a partnership. And I think going fully authorised at this stage would be a real folly for me. It really would, because you've got all those other costs and considerations that Tom mentioned, things like PI as well. I mean, not to be sniffed at. So being part of an organisation but having independence to operate within it is, for me, is a perfect solution for what I wanted to do.
And the two of you, so Nigel, you're obviously got someone working with you. It's obviously helping you with your administration and account handling. Tom, obviously you've got Martin working with yourself as well. I mean, running a business, which let's call it a small brokerage. I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but small in regards to bums on seats that sit within the business. Does that make things difficult on a Friday afternoon when, that challenging claim comes through the door, or an insurer pulls terms at the last minute? Does that leave you really isolated? I'll start with you, Nigel, if you don't mind on that question.
No, I don't think so, because if you were working with somebody, you'd still got to deal with it. Friday afternoon analogy is a good one, but you still got to deal with it. And you would also have a boss breathing down your neck, and the boss's boss, and all the rest of it's got to be dealt with. But for me, it's part of why we're here. That's what we're here for, to deal with those issues. And over the course of a year, if you were to have a look, I suppose, at how much time you spend doing things like that versus, having the flexibility to take an afternoon off here and there or wherever, it balances out. For me, it does anyway. Got a lot busier recently. I'll come on to that later, maybe. But generally speaking, those things don't bother me, because that's what we're here for, to sort those things out. And I also ring you at 8 o'clock on a Friday evening. I've had calls on Saturday morning. They're surprised when you answer, but it goes an awful long way to cementing that relationship.
But do you feel alone when you've got those troubles, or have you got a network to support you?
Say that again, sorry.
If you've got that issue on a Friday afternoon that hasn't quite gone to plan, do you have somebody to help? How do you break that down and ultimately get to the right answer? Is that completely reliant on you, or do you have support around you to make that happen?
Well, first port of call's me. If I can't answer it or resolve it, then it's usually somebody in Momentum. If it's a administrative thing where I need a certificate and I'm out, then Monica's there and she bang, it's done.
It's job done.
You know,
Yeah.
it's job to two and make concern letter. Or the other day, client had forgot he needed to fill in a contractor line form for one of his clients, and he'd forgot, and they were withholding payment. And he contacted me, and it was very late on. So I really need this in the next hour. I'm ever so sorry. This should have been done last week, and I forgot to send it to you. Boom, bash, done. Monica sorted it out because I was out. I can't put a price on that. For me, that's invaluable. And he was very happy then because he got what he needed.
And for you, Tom, that's great. Thanks, Nigel. For you, Tom, you've always had that infrastructure around you since you started in insurance. Does it sound a bit daunting? Does it feel a bit daunting? You're very, very in on this process.
No, not at all. I don't see it altering from where it's been, I don't know, 12 weeks ago, 12 months ago, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
My direct dial comes through to my mobile as it has done for 10 years. And I'm largely available, 7 days a week. I mean, my clients know that if they ring me out of hours on a Friday, that example, or the weekend, they're not expecting me to pick up, but they know that I'll pick up at some point and respond. And the likelihood is I'll confirm on Monday or whenever it is. The Friday sort of evening analogy or that point that you and Nigel were just talking about was, again, if it needs to be done, we get it done. That's what I do now. That's what I did last week, last month, last year. Having the team in the background is brilliant, but equally previously, most of the broking team and claims teams in our business or the business I worked at previously and other larger brokers will finish at 5 or 4 or whatever time they finish, and then they're gone. And on a Friday night at 5 o'clock, the answer phone's on, and that's it. You're stuffed. So you've got to deal with it yourself. And if you can't deal with it, then you have to relay that onto the client. But from my side and Martin's side, luckily we're both competent in, and this is no dig at Nigel at all, but we're both competent with Actress and the PAS system. And we know our way around it. So to be able to jump on that, we can do that in a timely manner. Likewise, if we're out and about, then you just have to deal with it as best you can.
Yeah. That makes sense. And Nigel, you alluded to getting a bit busier of late. You've recently completed your first acquisition, which for a lot of small independent brokers, I keep saying that, I don't mean that as a negative, but was probably completely out of sight and out of mind and beyond expectations, I would imagine, for a lot. How did that come about, and how important was it that you had someone in your corner to make that happen?
Well, yeah, it was left field for definite. But I got a call from somebody at Momentum saying one of the broker partners wants to retire and probably needs to retire. It's local. It's got a good fit, similar size, similar ethos, works in a similar way. Would you be interested? So, conversation went for lunch with the proprietor, and immediate fit. So we complete actually on Friday. The legals all done.
Brilliant.
But to all intents and purposes, been working on those clients since November last year. Yeah, and I have to say it's been a very smooth transition. But what it's meant, obviously, it's doubled the size of the brokerage. A hefty size for one person. Well, two now with Monica. But again, with Momentum's help, we've been able to navigate it. And it keeps us all, very busy, which is what we're here for, really. So yeah, that was a welcome, but very surprising turn of events last year for me.
and a great result for everybody involved. And I'm delighted for you. So well done, well done. And it's been a long time coming, that completion date. So let's not go there. The joys of solicitors, right? And look, Nigel, we can stay with you if you don't mind. If you're an account exec, a client director, or whatever out there who's silently considering next steps, what's the real question they should be asking themselves first?
Why do I want to do it? That would be the question for me. Why? And if you can answer that, in your heart of hearts, then the question becomes how, and then who. For me, that was the process I went through. So it was why. Well, I had lots of reasons, and I thought if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. It'd be too late. I'm lucky that I know a couple of sort of proprietors or independent brokers who've gone off and done great things. And then, so once I'd established my why, it was who. Well, that was only one choice for me because I knew Howard from previous. So it was very easy. I did have conversations with others, but it was momentum. And then the what followed after that. Sorry, the how. How do we do it? How's it going to look like? And it's surprising once you know the reason why you want to do it. Everything else seems to just fall into place after.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense. And Tom, what's your bit of advice and thoughts on that?
I mean,
well, like Nigel said, you need to look at the reasons why you think you want to do it. What is your rationale? Why you're moving from the safety of an existing business where you're being paid a decent salary, presumably, and you've got all the other benefits that come with that, with probably a larger company or even a smaller independent broker now. So you by doing it alone or going alone, you're losing that safety net. Sometimes you've just got to look. From my side, I've done it once. I learned a lot from the businesses I've been part of. I'm of an age where some people would retire, but I'm not ready to actually do that. I've got plenty of time still ahead of me. And Martin equally was looking at for an opportunity, and actually by pushing forward, so we decided that it was viable, and by partnering with an AR group, or becoming an AR rather, it gave us that access to the market to be able to do what we wanted to do, which was to run our own business and come back to being the boss and be a master of our destiny. And and ultimately, we're both reliant on the new business we put on and creating those new relationships with new clients, and hopefully grow with them as I've done historically with other clients, and move it forward from there and grow a good small independent brokerage, which hopefully in similar timescales to Nigel will be on the acquisition trail and look to acquire others.
Fabulous. So the wonderful world where you come from more recently, Tom, and Nigel more historically for you, is that corporate broking environment where there is a lot of structure, there's a lot of reporting, there's a lot of management layers, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one of the things that I know, Nigel, you've put someone in touch with us recently in this respect of, but what we're now starting to see in the market, certainly late 25 and early 2026, is we're starting to see that there's this, what I would say is the silent redundancies are starting to go on within these large broking houses in regards to levels of management being taken out, sales directors, sales managers, senior roles, etc., and the work has been spread thinner. I mean, I heard a great example the other day of an individual who had the great news that he was going to be given an extra 50% more income to look after, and then had his handler taken away in the same conversation. And that must be just so demoralising out there. But this is what is genuinely happening time and time again in these big broking houses. Now, Nigel, you've had a friend of yours who's sort of gone through these circumstances recently. What's your sort of take on that?
Yeah, a victim of circumstance, he described it as. But I think that's the, you've got to look at the brokerages and how they run. They're quite expensive businesses to run, and they've got a lot of deadwood, some of them. People doing stuff where you just think, well, what does that person do? Actually, no, not quite work. And I think with the market turning now and starting to soften slightly, those margins, particularly the acquisitive brokers, I'm not talking about the Aons and Marshes of the world. I'm talking more about consolidated brokers, if you like. They've got to service that debt, and when the income starts falling, they've got to start thinking, well, we either grow our way out of it, and that's difficult, or we start making, cuts. I've seen it time and time again over, 30 years. And if I was in that environment, I'm thinking, well, you got two choices. You either the situation you've described, where there's a ton more work. By the way, we're not going to give you a pay rise, and also going to take away some resource. Enjoy that, or the alternative is the sorry, mate.
Yeah,
you got to go.
Yeah. Look, when you've got returns needed for shareholders, you've got two choices, haven't you? You increase income or reduce expenses. And increasing income is a lot easier said than done. I mean, Tom, you've exited that world, and we don't particularly want to talk about ex-employers, but you must have seen an element of that coming through before you departed.
Yeah, to a degree. We've seen execs exit the business, and then their client base being shared amongst other execs. Broking teams again looking to handle more policies, more renewal dates. It's a difficult one. It's on the face of it, you're inheriting more clients, but then you've got to start from scratch in building that relationship. They already have a relationship with another exec. So it's an opportunity for the client to then look elsewhere because their relationship has gone. I think that's it's very difficult. It's inevitable. It's going to happen in the larger businesses, and also there's an awful lot of insurance personnel moving around the industry at the minute. There's a big high churn of execs and handlers and broking teams and claims teams and accounts teams and people who are moving around the industry, and you're seeing people being tempted away from their current roles by higher salaries, and so there's gone are the days of sort of I was going to say a job for life. It's not really a job for life, but people are moving more often for more money, and I just wonder where it's going to finish. Because you just can't keep going up and up and up. And I've seen numbers of new staff coming into business and ex-colleagues moving to other businesses for large, what I see as being large sums of money. And I just don't know how they can sustain it. And you look at that's the additional cost. That's another cost to those businesses, which Nigel mentioned as well. It's cost. So therefore they have to, and they need to maximize profit. And then who ultimately is going to suffer? Well, unfortunately, it's the clients. So then it's a relationship and premium, and then if you're not careful, it then becomes about premium. It's client loses out.
And ultimately, the more business you throw on someone's plate, the more service suffers, the more the client suffers.
You can't. If you, whatever your critical mass is from a policy or renewal, I was incredibly fortunate for 6 years to have a Martin sitting behind me as as an accomplished broker who I was very confident that could speak to all of my clients, and he became a he was obviously office based, and I was out and about. Other execs and other corporate teams have that relationship, which is brilliant. And the brokers in the marketplace, we've got some amazing colleagues in all the different companies that I've come across, who have an amazing skill set and are brilliant at their jobs. But you can't. The more you throw at them, the less brilliant they become, because you can't juggle too many balls, can you? You get to a point where you will drop one.
Well, look, can I jump to slightly different? It's the same question, but slightly different because of the way you are in your life cycle, James. But for start with you, if you don't mind, Tom. But how important is it for you when you started your business to start at lean in regards to a cost and an infrastructure basis? How important was that for you, Tom?
Oh, incredibly important. We're starting. Effectively, you started with nothing, aren't you? You start a new business. You don't have any clients. We don't have any. We can't just say, right, okay, let's transport all my clients into new brokerage. We have restricted covenants in our industry, which we fully respect. Moving forwards, it's no different. We're using the pipeline. We're targeting niche markets, niche areas that we always do, and we're confident we can achieve that. But it's going to be a steady climb. And the cost, we need to stay lean. So, working from home for two of us to start with works nicely. But latterly, the last few years, we've largely been working from home anyway. So again, since COVID, that whole, wearing a suit and tie and going into the office 9 to 5 days a week, with COVID hitting, that suddenly vanished. And so it tends to be open next year. So it's still smart and presentable in case a client needs you or you need to react. But yeah, we need to start lean. And by starting lean and moving forwards, then the AR route was the obvious route, and it's the leanest route for us. There is obviously a cost involved. But the cost is something you take into account. We don't need an office. We don't have rates. We don't have other utilities. We're working from home in the main. We have access to a PAS system that currently is Actress, which we know, as I've already said. And again, that cost is a relatively, it's a competitive price, but for a minimal other costs really associated with it. So yeah.
No, thank you for that. And look, I know you were chuckling with some of that answer there, Nigel. Desperate to hear your answers and responses, especially as I know I've seen too many photos of you in your shorts on the beach in Thailand, despite you saying that you're incredibly busy or got more busy at
late. You can still work in Thailand.
A bit more on your plate.
I did work in Thailand.
Exactly.
The time zone actually worked for me for once, because evening. But I think most people will start lean, work from home. I think what Tom's just said actually shone a folly on the suit and tie 9 to 5 in the office. Is just a complete folly as far as I was concerned. And it has no impact on productivity. Usually it's just people who have a problem with it are usually the people who would be the ones swinging the lead. But I have got an office. I did have one from day one. I sublet only because I wanted to separate out from where I was living, which wasn't ideal. It was like an apartment. It wasn't great for working. I'm sat here now in a home office, but I do still have my corporate office, if you like, if you can call it that. That was really the only cost. So going through this acquisition actually is quite interesting, because we've sort of with disclosure as to where costs are in the business. And my lawyer turned around to me and she said, apart from the office, there's not much else, is there? I went, no, not really. I've got letterheads that I had printed 8 years ago, boxes of them, business cards that occasionally will hand out. And, my website, which my mate did for me at the start, which probably could do with a bit of a revamp. My fixed costs are really my office. I lease a printer because it's obviously a good, great quality printer scanner, and the cost of in Monaco now, obviously, and IT. So in terms of my own IT infrastructure, so I've got a company that I use up in Manchester that any problems they just remote on and they fix everything. Got some firewalls and all that stuff. But other than that, really, I mean, then that stuff you can accumulate as you go along, because you can buy off the shelf packages to start with from Currys if you wanted to. Yeah, so you've got to watch the pennies because, again, unlike Tom, I mean, I didn't have any clients either. And I know you can't call on them for 12 months because of covenants and that. I didn't even have any to call on after 12 months. So I went a slightly different route using my background in sales and grew it on the ground up. Not easy, but it can be done. If I can do it, then most people can do it.
If you can do it, anyone can do it. That's what you're saying, Nigel. Is that going to be like our tagline for this podcast? Yeah,
I'm not but no, it's good fun as well. Because at the end of the day, you go home at the end of the day and you think, I've actually done something today, and I've kind of made a difference to myself, but also to the people that I'm working with, clients.
Yeah, no, it sounds brilliant. I'm very conscious we're coming to close here in regards to time, but what do people really underestimate? So it'll be quick fire on this if you don't mind, Jets, but what do people really underestimate about starting their own business? And I'll start with you, Tom.
Maybe the time involved to actually do the research and development to get it set up.
Yeah. How long did it take you?
I think it from first consideration, probably 12 months.
Yeah. And from when you had actually committed to, like, this is the route I'm going down? Well,
from commitment, then it sort of started to steamroll and the whole process speeded up. We said it's into months, and then those months become weeks and then days, and then suddenly it happens. But yeah, it's not something you think of and put into place over a couple of days. It's something that needs there's consideration and research and talking to the likes of yourselves at Momentum and other AR networks and other networks for direct compliance and doing that research. So yeah.
What was the hardest bit about starting this up? You talked about a lot of good things, gentlemen, but let's stay with you on this one, Tom. But what was the hardest bit about getting going?
Letting go, maybe.
Yeah.
That losing the safety net, losing the salary, and I was being paid very well for what I was doing, and for that I'm very thankful. And the whole support mechanism that sits with a large national brokerage. I can't. From that side, there's an awful lot of positives about the previous company and atmosphere and everything that I was in. So I think that was it was that losing that safety net, but actually the want to do it, the want to have my own company again was greater than the greater than the safety net. We'll see.
Letting go is a great way of putting it. I think a lot of people will probably that'll resonate with them because we're all naturally, myself included, control freaks, like to think that you can do it better than anybody else. But fundamentally, the quicker and sooner you realise you're going to play to your strengths, which for the majority of those client directors or account directors out there is client relationships and giving advice. The more successful you're ultimately going to be. I mean, Nigel, I think you live and breathe that, don't you?
Oh, yeah, because if I hadn't, I wouldn't be here now. I mean, I hit a brick wall in the February of that 2018. which we've talked about before. I just thought, oh, I cannot do this anymore. I've had enough. And like Tom, I looked around. I thought, well, how does this work? An independent broker successful? What attributes do they have that make them successful? But what could be better? So after that sort of February morning, I thought, right, what can I do? How am I going to, So I looked into it, and then I realised, obviously, Howard was running Momentum, and I thought that's the route. I had a chat with a friend of mine who'd set his own broker up. He went fully authorised, and I think between the February and I was ready to go June.
Look, Nigel, I mean, it's some really, really insight. Everyone, I think, does hit a brick wall at some stage, but do you know what? The sooner you realise, as I said earlier, about letting go of it, I think it's a critical piece, isn't it? Focusing on your strengths. And, Howard's got a really good mantra, which he sort of taught me from the day I started here nearly 10 years ago, which was, you know what, you should fill your day with things that you enjoy and that you're good at. There's always going to be stuff that, you're not going to quite enjoy, or it's not going to quite float your boat. But fundamentally, you work to live, or is it live to work? Which one is it? And I think a lot of people fundamentally struggle with that. And I think that's a really, really good point there, Nigel. So thank you for sharing that. But going back to the question, which was about what was the hardest bit about it, what do you say it was for you, Nigel?
Paying myself, really, I think was the hardest thing.
Discipline.
Yeah, and just saying, well, no, because the discipline's born out of the fact that if you don't do anything, you're gonna be skinned. And I didn't want, obviously don't want to be skinned, but also I didn't want to feel like I was a failure. So getting up in the morning and getting on the phone and prospecting and wasn't an issue for me. It wasn't. And obviously that got borne out by the fact that, in the first couple of years then I was starting to get a bit of traction. I think it's just the financial consideration is usually, I think, the biggest for everybody. Unless you're sitting on a ton of cash and you can afford to pay yourself and just take the hit if it doesn't work. Most people aren't in that position. So you've got to back yourself. If you've got good client relationships, I would feel more comfortable knowing that in 12 months they're probably going to follow you, most of them.
Track record tells me, and Tom, you would have had employees in the past that have moved on, and you've seen how they've taken their clients after covenants expire. But the track record which we've had, certainly I've experienced for the last 10 years here at Momentum is, if you've got a solid relationship with these clients and you have for 4 or 5 years plus, 60 to 70% of them are going to follow you without question. There are always caveats to that in regards to specific types of clients or niches. But the reality is people buy into you as an individual. They don't buy into the corporate brand above the door or otherwise. They want you because, you know what, they like, trust, and respect your advice and love what you do for them day to day. So if you're out there listening to this right now and you say, I don't know, I'm going to take the first step, I'm going to do something which is then going to allow me to understand whether this is right for me. Tom, what would you say that first step would be?
I think it's to sit down and look at the numbers, even though you've never done it before. If someone's been employed all the way through their career to date, they've been paid monthly, they've had pensions and bonus and everything else, and you need to set up a plan and look at the costings. Now the costings that I found from Momentum, it's transparent, it's nice, it's easy, it's straightforward. So you can look at the existing client base that you have, but also look at what as an exec or a sales individual you're generating on a monthly basis. What sort of targets have you achieved over the years? Can you, if you're achieving 30 grand, 40 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever per year, then what's to stop you continuing to do that moving forwards? So formulate a plan. So you've got a conservative plan. Don't be silly, but just get a feel for year 1, year 2, year 3. I know you mentioned, Alistair, that clients will follow because it's a relationship. Don't assume they're all going to follow. You're better
Definitely.
in some respects to assume they're not, because actually you need to be looking at what's self-generated and moving forwards. But everything you're doing moving forwards, don't look back. Looking back is bonkers. It's about looking forward. But if you can achieve your a sensible target for you and whoever comes in with you, if someone does, then that's what you push for. And you roll it on, and you can see that in the numbers. It's a relatively inexpensive type of business to set up. Like Nigel said, if you haven't, so we from our point of view, we've gone down the route of having a virtual office, which gives us meeting space and a city centre address, which is good for client meetings when we need it. But we are generally working from home. I'm fortunate that I have a very nice home office, which is remote from the house. So I go to work and I don't go back to the house until lunchtime, and then I go back to work. So it's having that cut off. I think working out of your bedroom is not a good idea. I think you need to, that's where like Nigel said, if you to have an actual physical office to go to is a must, really, or a decent working from home environment. But yeah, it needs planning, and you need to, have the guts and whatever you want to call it to do it and make the break, because it is a safety net that we're all used to. We've all been paid for years. Your salary comes in every month. To suddenly have that severed, and from whatever date you haven't got that. We all have commitments, whether it be a mortgage or car loan or whatever.
Yeah.
But actually, it's quite straightforward, really. Once you start drilling into it, the cost, like Nigel said, a good quality printer, good IT, so a laptop, a website, a presence, maybe a bit of letterhead and business cards, because I still believe business cards do get used, despite the virtual world we live in. Other costs, then it's mileage and getting out to see clients.
We did a webinar or specifically on the cost of starting up. It must have been about 12, 18 months ago, I think it was. And there was 4 individuals on there, and all of them started their business in regards to physical outlay of starting up for less than 10,000 quid. And now obviously there's putting food on the table and everything else after that, as you building your business. But excuse me, but it is relatively light touch in regards to that. I mean, Nigel, for you, what is that bit of advice for somebody out there who's thinking about taking their first step? What should they do? I mean, I think Tom's given a really good example of all their, dare I say, the thought process and putting pen to paper. But what else do you think they should be doing?
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, if you've got your why and you know where you're going in terms of which AR network you're going to partner with, obviously Momentum, the what then becomes crucial. So for me, having a plan and looking at it, right, for the first 12 months, right, and then break that down into months and weeks. What's it going to look like? What do I need to do? How am I going to pay myself? And, how am I going to cover my costs? But more than that, how am I going to build something so that when year 2 hits, you're going to add to it? And what's realistic? Most of these guys will be working in consolidated brokers where they've been given targets anyway, and they've got to achieve them. And they know how to grow an existing book of business. So for me, having a plan was crucial. And, I've done lots of sales plans down the years, and quite frankly, they weren't worth the paper they're written on, most of them. But, you did it to get somebody off your back. But when you're actually doing it for yourself, having a realistic plan, I had it stuck on the wall in front of me every day, so I could, like a summary, and I just kept looking at it, and at the bottom was a target, which was by the end of August 2019, I will have achieved XYZ, and I used to look at it every single day. And I don't know how it works, but it does work. Subconsciously, your mind starts working towards that goal. I think it was Napoleon Hill, and Think and Grow Rich. That's where I got it from, that book. And just a reminder why I was there every day. Because some days you can walk in and you think, oh, sun's out. I ain't got a boss. I'll just go and have a wander and I'll go to the pub for an hour or whatever it is. And you just can't do it. You got to have some discipline. And having a look at that plan and what you set yourself was a very good reminder for me day on day. Right, this is why you're here, Bartlett. Focus. Let's get this done. You can go home at the end of the day, or you can go home at 3 o'clock, providing you've done what you said you were going to do today to yourself, promised yourself. And if you can't promise yourself, promise somebody else who's very close to you that you'll do this, and I guarantee you'll probably do it.
Brilliant. One final question for you both. We talked around cost, and just due to time, we're going to have to cut this short. So a very, very short answer, gents, is a lot of people think those who start brokerages up have got the silver spoon, if you know what I mean, or a pots of cash, or have been very lucky or done very well at saving money over the years with their previous roles and the rest of it. Both of you have come from well-paid jobs. Both of you have obviously started your brokerages, but how much truth is in all of that you need pots of cash to make a successful insurance brokerage work? And I'll start with you, Tom. Please do keep it brief, just simply so we're running out of time.
I don't believe you need pots of cash at all. You need enough to live on, whether that's in savings. And like you say, the initial outlay is relatively small. You mentioned 10 grand, sub 10 grand by the time website technology, etc. The key is the what you can live on yourselves for the first 12 months as you, to coin a phrase, gather momentum. Because
thank you for adding that in late in the day. That's very kind of you.
It took me an hour. I do apologise. I've been saying it for weeks, but anyway, but it is that's the reality of it. You need your business as it gathers momentum again. You're starting to put clients on. Your clients starting to earn commission and fees and income as a result, which will then reduce what you're having to put in from savings. And the faster you do it, the better it is, and the better the plan. And like Nigel says, if you've got the plan on the wall up there that you can look at and see, right, monthly I need to achieve this, then great. If you know that on this day I've done it, first week of the month, I've hit target, everything else is a bonus. If you're within a whisker of it, then you go balls out to get it. Sorry.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. Nigel, that's no problem. Thank you, Tom. But Nigel, what's your take on that? Pots of cash or no pots of cash?
No pots of cash. I agree with Tom. I didn't have a pot of cash. I really didn't. So I cut everything back for that year. And for a chunk of the second year, because by the time the second year rolled around, we entered COVID. And I thought, oh, God, this is going to be the end of the world, this is. But, managed to negotiate that as well. But no, you don't need a pot of cash. I would argue it's one way to lose a big pot of cash, because I don't necessarily feel that the hunger would be there. I'm just personally, I got let's talk around. So I've got 100 grand pot of cash. I'll just take today off, or I'll take tomorrow off, and the next thing you know, you've eroded it. You've got nothing to show for it, really. Whereas if you start with nothing or next to nothing, I think the motivation is just that much greater, personally. That's just me. Might work differently for other people, but not knowing if you've been able to follow yourself is a big motivator.
I think it's a really, really interesting view on it. So the one take is people want the pots of cash to give them that comfort. The flip side of it is the pots of cash for some people give too much comfort. Now, one of the things which we've been doing, and we've been for the last couple of years, has been helping fund new startups and giving them that boost to get them going. But it's and it has been incredibly beneficial, and has created opportunities that wouldn't have otherwise happened, and that's okay. But yeah, no, I think it's really, really important that you understand your own motivation, your own psyche, and then ensure that mirrors what you've got financially and ultimately what you can deliver in regards to new business. It's something which a lot of people get confused or don't really appreciate is do you know what, you delivered X amount of new business in the last 10 years as an account exec. That is not going to stop happening when you start your own brokerage. So you just don't have a renewal book to keep you tied down. So there's fundamentally massive opportunities for you to do so, with, as both the gentlemen have said, with a limited amount of money. But gents, we're over time, unfortunately. So just a really, really big thank you on behalf of everybody who's listening, on behalf of me and everyone here at Momentum for taking your time to share your stories, share your views on the wonderful world of starting your own brokerage. So thank you very much for that. As I say, that's all the time we have today for the conversation. Thanks to our guests for joining us, but the conversation doesn't have to end there. I hope we've opened up some doors for you. We hope that we've created some genuine insight from two people who have built themselves some very successful businesses and ultimately working in partnership with ourselves. I'll be the first to admit, look, starting an insurance brokerage isn't for everybody. However, it's something which is within reach for many account execs and client directors out there. I speak to a lot of people week in, week out, who are sort of tossing up whether or not it's the right thing to do for themselves. The one thing which I think is the bit which is a real valuable starting point is just to have that conversation, because until you have that kind of conversation and start understanding the art of the possible, you really will never know whether you've reached your full potential in that respect. And I'm incredibly proud of what we see day in, day out from people like Nigel and from Tom in regards to building their businesses. And it sounds a bit cheesy, give me one of the most rewarding jobs I think I could possibly have. But enough of that. There are even more stories from our broker partners to hear on our Momentum Meets podcast. Listen on our website or watch on YouTube. Simply scan the QR code on the screen, which hopefully should be coming up shortly. This conversation will be available to listen in the coming weeks. So for those who are looking for next steps, as Nigel and Tom have said, it's all about open communication, whether that starts with a chat. If both the gentlemen, once I didn't ask them today, I'm pretty damn sure they'll happily have a conversation with you and explore their journey and obviously help you make your own decisions. We're here as well for you, wherever you may be on your journey. If you'd like to book in some time with us, there is also a QR code on the screen there, which you can book some time and would happily help you with how to form the ideas, write your business plan, and even more discuss funding opportunities. So once again, a big thanks, Tom and Nigel, and to you all for joining me. I hope we chat soon.